Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today, I kind of want to take a few minutes and just talk about one of the big fight announcements that was just made, and that's about between Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. It's going to take place at UFC 262 on May 15th, and it's going to be the first 5-round co-main event that's a non-title fight in UFC history, right? So a big deal. And when this first broke, I was kind of like, man, Leon Edwards against Nate Diaz. I don't know if that matchup makes a lot of sense because, like, at heart, I'm kind of a purist, right? Like, I believe in fighting guys who are ranked higher and blah, 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 blah. But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, all right, well, consider the landscape at 170. I think probably the best fight for Leon Edwards would have been Colby Covington because I think Colby Covington is a pretty popular fight for the fans. Like, people want to tune in to see Colby lose and all that shit, blah, blah, blah. But also, I think that fight probably, if Leon Edwards is able to win, probably guarantees him a shot at the title, right? So I think that a fight against Colby Covington would have been the best possible outcome for Leon Edwards. But if you can't get Colby, look at the rest of the rankings. Number 2 is Gilbert Burns. And Gilbert Burns, while a very talented fighter, is coming off of a 3rd-round finish loss to Kamaru Usman, the champion. So I'm not sure that going in beating the guy that the champ just beat decisively does a lot for Leon Edwards' career, right? Leon Edwards is ranked number 3. And then right below him is Jorge Masvidal at number 4. Well, Masvidal is currently slated to fight Kamaru Usman in April in Florida for the welterweight championship, right? So that's not going to work, even though they have some beef. And then number 5 is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, I mentioned how I'm like a little bit of a purist, right? If the fight between Colby Covington and Leon Edwards doesn't work out, Leon Edwards and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is probably the next fight to make if you're a purist. But consider this, guys. Do you think that if Leon Edwards and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson got booked for UFC 262 in the co-main event, that it would be a 5-round fight? No fucking chance. This fight is a 5-round fight because it's Nate Diaz, right? This fight is going to do a lot for Leon Edwards' popularity. And I think he knows that, right? I think he's aware of that. I think he knows that in this game, sometimes it's not always about your ranking and the quality of the opponents that you face. Sometimes it's just about who's more popular. And a win over Nate Diaz is just going to do more for the trajectory of Leon Edwards' popularity in his career than a win over Wonderboy would, even though a win over Wonderboy is probably more legitimate in terms of determining who's ready to fight for the title next, right? And it's a great matchup stylistically too. Like, I love the fight, but it's just, it's not realistic. And this is going to set Leon Edwards up maybe for an easier path to the title for 2 reasons. Number 1, consider Colby Covington's last loss. His last win. His last win was against Tyron Woodley, who's now coming off a loss to Vicente Luque. So Colby Covington has been going through this kind of inactivity spell, and I don't think that his most recent win looks all that fucking good, right? And number 2, if you're trying to put some wins together and get yourself into title contention, is it going to be easier to do that just being honest against Nate Diaz or Wonderboy Thompson? Who do you think the easier fight is for Leon Edwards? I think it's Nate Diaz, man, and that's not a slight against Nate Diaz. I fucking love Nate Diaz, but I do think that I think Leon Edwards is more skillful than Nate, right? So I think that it's a little bit of an easier matchup for him, and it maybe gives him a way to kind of catapult himself over the number 1 contender in Colby Covington. Because like I said, I don't think Colby Covington's most recent win over Woodley means all that much anymore. He's a guy who's now on the verge of retirement, right? So I don't know, man. But also consider the other fights on this card. Like, the headlining bout is going to be Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title. Right below that, you got the first, like I said, non-title 5-round co-main event in UFC history in Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. And then right below that is Beneil Dariush and Tony Ferguson. So you have a very strong card that he's on. And yeah, man, I think this is all just a popularity thing. Like I said, I think it's not always about the quality of the guys he fought. And I think Leon Edwards knows that. And I think also consider the trajectory of a guy that we talked about a few minutes ago, Jorge Masvidal. Think about his career, right, and how it's gone. Kind of a journeyman, definitely picked up some really good wins in his career, had some tough losses, a guy who's hard to finish, hard to put away. Been in the game forever, Kimbo Slice videos, all that, right? He goes in and he knocks out Darren Till. And that's when people go, oh, fuck, that's a clean knockout over a very skilled striker, right? Then he goes in and starches Ben Askren in 5 seconds. Fastest knockout in UFC history. Flying knee against one of the greatest wrestlers in MMA in the sport, right? Goes viral. All these people are talking about him. Boom. And how is he rewarded? Who's his next fight? Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. That's how big of a superstar Nate Diaz is. Like, he's just going to generate interest. This is a good move both for the UFC and for Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, obvious reason, the popularity that comes with it, the chance for a title shot, the chance to kind of cut in line. Not necessarily, I don't want to say cut in line because Leon Edwards is ranked number 3. Like, he's earned his right to fight for the title. And if he can go in and beat a guy like Nate Diaz, like I said, he does it against maybe a little bit of an easier opponent than some of the guys in the top 5. And at the same time, he's making himself popular. But for the UFC, if you're looking at Leon Edwards the way I am, you're looking at him and going, okay, this is a guy who's not necessarily very popular right now, but definitely he's not even into his prime yet, and he definitely has what it takes to potentially hold the welterweight title. Like, I think Leon Edwards has a championship skill set. I really do. I think he's very good, right? So if this is going to be a potential future champion, you need to find a way to get some push behind him and get some momentum behind him and get some eyeballs on the screen when he's fighting. And if he can go in and beat up a guy like Nate Diaz, who was just a fighter to his core, man. And that's why MMA fans love him, right? That's why he's so beloved throughout the communities, because he's just a fucking fighter. People are going to respect, because Nate Diaz is going to make it a fight, man. Like, if you beat Nate Diaz and look good, it's because you were very technically sound and everything, blah, blah, blah. But Nate is going to make it a fight. Like, if you're not going to get away with just winning against Nate. He's going to make you fight him, right? So this is going to, like I said, it does a lot in terms of people respecting Leon Edwards, in terms of them respecting his skill, and in terms of him just like getting some recognition on his name finally. A guy who's one of the most underappreciated fighters on the entire fucking roster, let alone the welterweight division, right? So I don't know, man. I do kind of think that this is probably the best case scenario for Leon Edwards, other than fighting Colby Covington, and maybe even a better scenario, all things considered, right? Like the fact that they are making it 5 rounds. You know, you got to consider, man, this is a co-main event spot, and Leon Edwards, I believe, has headlined 3 UFC events in his career, right? Cowboy, RDA, and then most recently Bilal Muhammad. And this co-main event spot is probably going to be the biggest fight in terms of people who are interested in it in his entire career, and he's headlined 3 events so far. So, you know, having trouble getting people to watch this guy, that's not going to be a problem anymore when he fights Nate Diaz. You know, it's also one other thing to consider. This is high risk, high reward for Leon Edwards. Like I said, I think Leon is probably more skillful than Nate, but that doesn't mean that Nate's not going to turn it into a dogfight, and that doesn't mean that Leon couldn't lose this fight. And if he does lose this fight, he's going to drop pretty goddamn far on those rankings fighting a guy who he's supposed to beat on paper, right? So it's not like this is like there's no risk associated with this fight for Leon Edwards. There definitely is. Like, a loss to Nate Diaz is not going to look good. But a win over him, skyrocket in terms of popularity. And like I said, I mean, fucking Jorge Masvidal, man, was rewarded with fighting Nate Diaz. And then after he beat Nate Diaz, he fought Usman for the title. Granted, it was on short notice, but now he's fighting him again. So if you're Leon Edwards and you're looking at how things are being laid out in the UFC and what really matters, yeah, man, if I have a choice between, I'm not saying I don't know if he had a choice if he was offered, but if I have a choice between Wonder Boy, who's a little better in the rankings, but is probably going to give me a tougher fight stylistically, and Nate Diaz, who's much more popular and isn't even listed in the official rankings, and who I think I probably am going to be able to beat a little bit easier while gaining some, you know, popularity in the process, it's an easy call, man. And I'm happy for Leon Edwards, especially considering everything he's gone through, the inactivity. And you saw how devastated he was in that FaceTime that ESPN or whatever posted when he was FaceTiming his mom after the eye poke against Bilal. So, man, a guy who's been through a lot and is finally, you know, going to get his. So, exciting to see. Can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun fight. And that whole card is stacked. So, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And, yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.